To record, Sabrina. Oh,
Mhm.
there we go.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks, Monica. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Karen Hummelbach. I am the director of Paid Leave Oregon here at the Oregon Employment Department. And again, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate the opportunity to not only share some information with you, but also to have a dialogue and answer questions the best we can as we move throughout the time together. So today we're going to spend the first few minutes providing you an overview of the program and including the specific bullets that you see here on the screen right now. After we conclude that introduction, we're going to answer your questions, provide clarity on items. If we don't know the answer, we'll definitely write them down and get back to folks. Please keep in mind that we are still developing some of our rules, policies, and our procedures. And so if we aren't able to answer your question, we do take them back to our technical experts, and then we'll get back to the group or individually respond to you. Today, we're going to provide general overviews of paid leave, talk about how it's going to work, who's covered, who contributes, and what kind of assistance is available. I'm pleased to have Monica Torres, a member of our outreach and engagement team with us today. She's dropping links in the chat for you. She's also going to help me out with the questions at the end. The slide here just shows you our leadership and outreach team. We're all working together to get information out to folks, and so you may see any of us along the way. If you can reserve your questions to the end or drop them into chat, we'll use the hand raising function later. That would be great. So before we get started talking about paid leave specifically, we do like to talk about the values that we hold at the Oregon Employment Department. These values reflect how we operate. They guide all of our actions and decisions. And one of our agency goals is explicitly about engaging with communities so that we can build strong relationships. And we're hopeful that these sessions continue to build on that commitment. Paid Leave Oregon's mission and vision are unique, and they reflect the important work of this new program. Paid Leave Oregon's mission and vision, as you see here on the screen, is to ensure that individuals, employers, and families of every kind have the time, support, resources, and peace of mind during life's most important moments. Paid Leave Oregon strives to ensure that as we build this program, we are providing universal and equitable access. And this includes consciously designing our program with consideration for disability, income, race and ethnicity, culture, gender and gender identity, employment status, education level, folks' geographic locations, their access to technology, and previous justice system involvement. We've recognized that when individuals we serve come to us, they may have experienced trauma or they may be in crisis when they are accessing our program. And so we're committed to using trauma-informed approaches when we engage with the public. And this commitment also extends to recognizing, approaching, and offering government-to-government consultation with the 9 tribal nations whose borders are within Oregon. So let's talk a minute about Paid Leave Oregon. In Oregon, paid leave is for up to 12 weeks with 2 additional weeks for some pregnancy-related medical conditions. And leave can be taken in the 3 broad categories you see here on the screen. Family leave, to care for a family member with a serious illness or injury, or to bond with a new child after birth, adoption, or foster care placement. Medical leave, which is really about one's own serious health condition. And safe leave, for survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, harassment, or stalking. Paid leave was passed by the Oregon legislature in 2019, and we are one of only 12 programs like this across the country. You see that on this slide. Paid leave provides an important and vital safety net for working Oregonians who need to take time off for those major life events. And this program has the potential to impact some of the ongoing causes of generational poverty we see, giving low-wage workers more opportunities that other workers often already have. So the ability to take time off, to bond with their children, for survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence to address their own safety and healing, and for individuals to take care of the health needs for themselves or for their loved ones. The data indicates that paid leave increases economic security, it improves equitable access to healthcare, it promotes healthy child development, and improves the response to and prevention of violence and abuse in our communities. And paid leave also has some really tangible benefits for businesses. It reduces employee turnover, it promotes long-term employee retention through the reduction of hiring and training costs, and it increases productivity and morale. Here in Oregon, we're headed into the final months of implementation for paid leave, and we are still on track to meet all of our major deliverables that you see here. We begin to accept equivalent plans for employers beginning here on September 6th. We begin withholding contributions in January of 2023, and we will begin paying benefits to qualifying individuals and issuing assistance grants starting in September of 2023. Paid Leave Oregon covers nearly all employers in Oregon. That includes nonprofits, S-corps, religious organizations, and all employees except employees of federal and tribal governments are required to participate in the paid leave program. Tribal governments and self-employed business owners and independent contractors may choose to participate by notifying the paid leave program and opting into coverage. So how do contributions work? Contributions are a percentage of wages paid by both the employee and the employer. And it's how we're funding the Paid Leave Oregon program together. The contribution rate or percentage for paid leave is set annually. We have to set that rate no later than November 15th. And that rate cannot exceed by law 1% of gross employee wages. The rate for 2023 is 1% of up to $132,900 in wages. If you have earnings over $132,900, those additional wages are not subject to contributions. The 1% rate was set after 2 years of analysis and actuary data. We had a lot of discussions with our advisory committee that's made up of members representing business, worker, and community voices, including Dalton Organization through Amanda. And there are a number of reasons why we chose this rate, but again, we do reevaluate it each year. Employees pay 60% of the contribution rate, and large employers will pay 40% of the contribution rate. If you're a small employer with fewer than 25 employees, then you are not required to pay the employer portion of the contribution. So as an example, if you earned $1,000 in wages this month, the employee would pay $6 and the large employer would pay $4. Employers may choose to pay for the employee portion as a benefit to their employees. So let's talk a little bit about employer size. For our program, there are different rules for large and small employers, and we only have two definitions, large or small. We define large employer as those with 25 or more employees. Employee size is determined by payroll reports that are submitted by the employer, and the employee count will be determined each April. The employee count is more of a head count, so it includes full-time, part-time, seasonal, temp workers, as well as any out-of-state workers. And employers determine their size by counting the number of employees inside and outside of Oregon. Only workers hired to replace employees taking paid leave are excluded from this count. So for small employers, we define that as less than 25 employees. And there are some special stipulations for small employers. Employers with fewer than 25 employees are not required to contribute the 40% employer share, but they can do so as a benefit to their employees. Employees always contribute their 60% portion of the contribution, regardless of the size of the company. There are assistance grants for small employers that agree to pay the employer portion of contributions. They may be eligible for these to help pay for the cost of hiring a replacement worker or other significant wage-related costs. These grants are available for $3,000 to hire a replacement worker or $1,000 for wage-related costs like overtime and training costs. You can receive up to $30,000 per year in grants per employer. Let me talk a little bit about self-employed and independent contractors. While you're not required to participate in Paid Leave Oregon if you're in one of these categories, you can opt into the program. And for purposes of Paid Leave Oregon, self-employed is defined on how you pay yourself. So if you are an employee of your business and you receive a paycheck that you report on a W-2, then you are considered an employee covered by Paid Leave Oregon. However, if you receive profits from your business that you report as self-employed income on your taxes, then you are considered self-employed, which means you can choose to participate or to opt in to paid leave. If you choose to opt in, you do need to pay the employee portion of the contribution, which is that 60%. And then you would receive benefits just like any other worker paying into our state trust. There are job protections under Paid Leave Oregon. As an employee, your job is protected if you've worked for your employer more than 90 days. And this applies to both large and small employers. If the position no longer exists when the person returns, the employer may choose to place them in a different position with similar job duties with the same pay. So one question we get frequently is really just about the math. So what does payroll contribution look like? And so this slide shows some examples of what the contribution amount equals for different types of wage earners. So you'll see sort of just 3 examples: minimum, high, and middle income wages. So if we just take that minimum wage worker as an example, annually that individual is going to pay $168 in contributions, and the business would pay $112. 1 week of paid leave benefits for that same individual is $540. These lowest wage workers receive 100% wage reimbursement, and then we get less than 100% for those workers in middle and high income jobs. For this year, the state average weekly wage is currently $1,224.82, and the minimum weekly benefit amount would be $61.24. The maximum weekly benefit being at $14,069.78. I just said that wrong. I said 14,000, didn't I? Sorry, 1,400. Oh my goodness. Hopefully people can read better than I just read that. Goodness. All right, so let's talk about equivalent plans. Some businesses are going to choose to purchase or create their own equivalent plan versus participating in the state trust. And so individuals working for an equivalent plan employer will still receive the same level or higher of benefit required by Paid Leave Oregon. So when you have a life event, a worker would apply for leave, including any eligibility documentation. They let their employer know that they are going to need leave. And then after they're approved for leave and benefits, you receive weekly payments for the amount of time you need. Again, that's up to the 12 weeks for most situations, with 2 additional weeks possible for those specific pregnancy-related medical situations. And if you have been employed more than 90 days, your job is protected while you're receiving benefits. One of the ways in which folks are able to inform paid leave as a program is by sharing your ideas, your suggestions, or your concerns about the rules that we have created. And you can contribute your comments related to rules through our website, through the sites listed above, by email, and during our public hearings. We're getting really close to finishing our initial rulemaking period, but we do have a couple of final, I think 2 more public comment periods. So you can go to our paid leave rulemaking site that Monica has put in the chat and get information about those hearings if you would like to contribute to that conversation. So before we provide a recap of the presentation, we're kind of rounding this out. I did just want to have a disclaimer that we know that a lot of folks have questions about taxability. We are currently working with the Oregon Department of Revenue, the Oregon Department of Justice to determine taxability, because the Internal Revenue Service federally currently has no guidance on these paid leave programs. We will issue guidance as soon as this information is available, and we would really encourage you to sign up for our bulletins and updates. This is a way in which you can hear about this as the information comes in and stay really up to date. So let me do a quick recap and then I'll get into the questions. I know there are a couple in chat already, and we'll just go from there. This summary page just sort of is the kind of highlights of the presentation, but the contribution rate for 2023 is 1% of gross wages. Again, the employee contributes 60% regardless of the size of their employer. If you're a large employer, again, that's 25 or more employees, you contribute 40% of the contribution rate, while small employers can choose whether they contribute to the employer portion. Any employee who earned at least $1,000 in the year before claiming paid leave may be eligible for benefits. So this concludes the overview. We're happy to hear your questions, clarify. I'm going to move my presentation over here so I can see the chat. And we could do raised hands if that works for folks. Either one is totally fine with us. And I'm going to go back up in the chat real quickly. I think a couple of questions came in. Mike asked the question, does the number of employees include part-time employees and volunteers? It does include part-time. Volunteers is something that is exempted, but there is sort of a squishiness here that we're getting some guidance on currently. So this is another reason to sign up for bulletins. There are some volunteers who get paid some level of a stipend. A good example of that might be like a volunteer firefighter or something. And we're getting clarification about how those wages are reported and making sure that that volunteers are not part of that category. So stay tuned on volunteers, but yes, to part-time employees, they do count in your count. Ashley asked the question about job protections. FMLA is 180 days, paid leave is 90. Does that mean OFLA is changing to 90? No, this is a great question, Ashley, and also just a good moment in time to mention that when paid leave was passed in 2019, the legislature did make a conscious choice to not repeal OFLA. So OFLA still exists in it and everything with it. It has not been repealed. So nothing is changing in OFLA. Paid leave is very much standalone, although there are some issues around concurrence and how we will work together. OFLA, FMLA still regulated and authority with Bureau of Labor and Industries, paid leave with Oregon Employment Department, and none of the OFLA statutes are changing. There is a lot of discussion about whether the legislature wants to tackle this in the next legislative session. I think there's some interest from folks to get some clarity, but so far those things are standalone. Moving down to Brian's question, and Monica, let me know if someone raises their hand if you see, but I don't think so yet.
I will say I did have one come in direct message right now to me.
Okay.
So I'll read it out to the group in case anybody else is wondering. It says, what if the employee never uses this and retires? What if the company dissolves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great question. So the benefit does not really follow the individual like you might think in unemployment insurance or even traditional insurance plans. This is really us building a state trust fund that becomes a pool of funding. So if I contribute off my salary for the next 5 years and I don't need to take paid leave for any reason, I will just be contributing into the trust, which is available to all. And then I retire in 5 years. And then it does not come with me. It does not come back to me. It has just gone into the trust. And so that same example, it doesn't really matter what company you work for. If you have switched employers over time, again, it's really about us developing that trust and people having access to that. It's very likely that some of us will not use our paid leave benefit over time, or perhaps use a couple of weeks of it over a year, and maybe none 1 year and 11 weeks the next year, just depending on the life events that happen to us. But that's sort of the concept behind the trust. And if you get anything else on that, Monica, if that person has follow-up, let me know.
Will do.
So Brian asked the question, if an employer provides paid leave, example, 8 weeks of parental leave, can the employee get an additional 12 weeks on top of the employer benefits? The simple answer to that is yes, that is a possibility. Paid leave runs separately from anything you already have in your own employer portfolio. I think a lot of businesses are looking at this and trying to determine what they want to continue in their benefits portfolio now that there is paid leave as an option. This probably extends to people thinking in their minds like, oh, what about my short-term disability or long-term disability plans or different things that are offering? So each business is going to sort of have to reevaluate what their own portfolio is and then what paid leave will cover. And so you are also, as an individual, able to take paid leave first and without accessing your employer benefits. So you, as an individual, if I had a kid and so I wanted to take my time off and I had the 12 weeks, I would, do all the things, eligibility, all of that, and then take that 12 weeks. And if I happen to have another 40 hours of sick leave or PTO or something that the employer offered, I could also take that. And you do not have to use the employer benefit first. You can use your paid leave benefit first. Kathy asks, should we set up an equivalent plan? Can we save the funds and direct as we wish? I don't want to answer this one incorrectly, and I'm going to cut and paste it into a little lifeline I have over here. I think the bottom line is no. You need to be collecting funds the same way that you can't exceed the 60% that the employee has. You have to keep it in a trust that is separate. The equivalent plan has to have all the elements, but so you can't direct it as you wish. But I think you're sort of asking the question, maybe that has to do with like, could you refund someone's money over time? I'm not sure if that's where we were getting. And Kathy, if you wanted to come off mute and clarify, I'll also try and make sure I get an answer in my chat separately.
You did somewhat answer me, Karen, in that if an employee then did retire, could they keep their 60%? Can I refund them when they leave the company?
Okay. Yeah, let me just make sure. Everybody will just give me 1 second. So I get you the correct answer.
One of my concerns, Karen, and forgive the negative content, but encouraging employees to take the additional time off when you already provide them time off for sick leave and so forth. I guess if I was able to refund that employee their contribution, then they would be more incentivized to use that fund or that money more productively or more. Follow what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying. And I think that inside the law that is not allowable. When you set up your equivalent plan, an equivalent plan has to essentially have that same mirrored benefit and sort of pooling kind of concept that the state plan does. And so I don't think that that's a possibility because it's sort of being held in your own sort of mini trust or mini account to do that. And so there are some places here where we're really held to this by how the legislature passed the law, and other places where we have some flexibility in rules. This is a place where the equivalent plans are really identified in law that way. And I'll let you know if I hear anything differently in the chat as we go along. So if you can give me just a minute.
I appreciate
a couple.
Oh, yeah,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to say, if we want to take these two, they're very similar. We've got two people in chat asking if employees can opt out, kind of while we wait for response back.
Simple answer to that is no, you may not opt out. Employees cannot opt out. The only choice is if you're one of those special categories like tribal governments or self-employed independent contractor, you can opt in. But for most of us, there is no opting out from a business or individual perspective. And then Bob's asking an equivalent plan question, confirming if you have an equal or better paid leave plan, the employer does not pay into the program. I assume there's an application, etc. Yeah, so all of this is correct, what you've written here, Bob. If you want to go the equivalent plan route, starting on September 6th, you'll be able to apply for an equivalent plan. Yes, it will include an application process. It's a $250 fee. You would basically upload the insurance binder showing that you have the greater to, equal to or greater than plan as proof. And then you would still have reporting to us, but we would no longer, you aren't paying into the state trust. We're also not paying individual benefits checks. That's all through your insurer, your third party, however you're managing that. And then you are still reporting wages. You're still reporting all your employees like you normally would in terms of quarterly reporting, but not paying into the state trust.
Thank you, Karen. I've got one from a direct message from Stacy. It says, so back to the last question, since it doesn't follow you, I think contributions, if someone contributes for 3 years at one employer and then moves on, do they start over on their benefit amount, or do they get what was banked under that trust? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is another place where it doesn't, like in a lot of our minds, it doesn't work the same way as like unemployment or other things that would follow an employer. So a person could have one job forever, they could have 5 jobs in 1 year. As long as they've earned $1,000, they're going to be eligible, $1,000 in a year, the previous 4 quarters, essentially. They would be eligible for the full amount of their paid leave benefits, assuming they've met eligibility for the conditions, et cetera. So it does not matter what company they were with. It doesn't matter if they've only earned, a certain amount of wages at one job. It's really about that $1,000 in wages in the previous year. So it's not really associated with your actual company in that it doesn't follow you that way. The one caveat there is that if you haven't been at your new employer for 90 days, you may qualify for the benefit, but you would not qualify for the job protections. And so that's the kind of the caveat there. Going back to the chat really quickly, could you please go over again what help the employer can get when withholding the employee's job during the leave, and holding the employee's job during the leave? Yes, so I think this one's referencing sort of the assistance grants for small employers. And so if you are a small employer and you're choosing to pay the employer portion, because that's an option for you, then you are eligible for those assistance grants for things like hiring, training, and those kind of wage related costs with the hiring and training. And so those are $1,000 or $3,000 up to $30,000 total in a year. So it kind of depends on how many folks you have and how many people are on leave. And so that is, and Monica's just put that back on the screen. We can also, if we haven't already, drop the presentation in PDF, and we can make sure that Sabrina gets it as well, so that folks can go back and look at these slides if they had some specific questions. What are the eligibility requirements, if any? There are eligibility requirements. It kind of depends on which of those kinds of leave, whether it's the family leave or the safe leave, or the which portion you're in. But folks will have to meet eligibility requirements to show that there is a serious health condition for themselves or for a loved one, and having that medical documentation. Safe leave is a little different. We're outlining right now in rules what that looks like for safe leave, but having documentation as well. And so the eligibility requirements kind of go with each of the kinds of types of leave. We can definitely share with people what those requirements are. And also that's another one where going to our website and looking around, you can find that information as well. Question about, will the state send us a letter so we can pass it on to the payroll company? So yes, if you are participating in the state trust, and then we would be communicating with the person who's asked for leave. We would get their eligibility documentation. We would approve them for leave at whatever amount was appropriate. And then we will let the employer know that the individual is approved for leave, for example, for 3 weeks. And we would let you know through your actual portal. We have a new modernized system that's coming on line on September 6th. That's the place I referenced a little while ago that you could upload those equivalent plans. And that's also a place in which we'll communicate with folks about individuals who are approved for leave. Deb asked the question, why are we not allowed to require them to use PTO sick or other employer provided before they apply for these hours? small employers are already super short staffed, but basically they get a lot of extra time. And then the issue of finding replacements. Yeah, this is the way in which the law was written. So this is statutory language that paid leave can be used first and prior to any exhaustion of PTO or other leave. This is also where I've talked about that I think businesses are reevaluating what all that looks like for them with this new thing coming on in terms of what their plans look like. Certainly understand the labor market situation going on, particularly with this group. I assume you all have a lot of skilled and licensed folks who are working for your organizations, and finding replacements, I'm sure, is already a challenge. So want to just recognize that. And also, I don't know that there's a really easy solution. We have talked about working with licensing agencies and also just internally with the employment department. We are able to access lists of people who have particular credentials or licenses who are looking for work and getting those to an employer when they have someone out on paid leave so that you have sort of access to a pool of folks. So we're going to try and problem solve around this to be the best partners we can in that situation. But I understand that's definitely a difficulty in how things are set up. Brenda asks, can we get the presentation emailed? I think certainly we can. We'll make sure that Sabrina gets this and however that communication works for you all, but we can also just drop it in the chat as well.
So I will say I'm having a little snafu dropping it into chat, but
okay.
I did connect with Sabrina. So we'll
okay.
make sure that Sabrina gets it out to everyone that
Perfect.
attended.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so the final question I'm seeing here, and I'm sure others will come up with more, but is, will the employee's contribution be a pre-tax or post-tax deduction? This is pre-tax on the employee contribution. That's pretty much the only tax question that I can answer because all the rest are sort of out there in the tax sphere that I kind of mentioned in that second to the last slide. We're still waiting for some guidance on, are the benefits taxable? What if the business chooses to pay the employee portion? Is that, is there any tax benefit to that? So there are a number of questions, Stacy, that will emerge over time, but for that particular question, it is pre-tax. Is the employer only notified through the portal versus email or snail mail? I honestly don't know the answer to that one. Monica, do you?
I don't believe that it's been decided. I know we're still working out like all of the nuances of what we're going to let the employer know once approval has come through. And so I think that will come once we know what we're going to report back to the employer. We will have a determination on how that'll be reported back also.
Thank you. And just getting back to the question that was asked sort of about like, if you did an equivalent plan, can you choose to sort of save that and give that back to a person upon retirement, et cetera? It looks like in our chat, at least as of currently, that's not an option. It really does have to sort of mirror what we're doing in the state trust. And so employee contributions really are for plan administration only, and they can be remitted to the department if there's termination or withdrawal of your equivalent plan. But other than that, if you kept your equivalent plan forever, it would just go into administration of that plan and benefits to other employees over time. Okay, so moving on or back into chat. As a nonprofit for my board, that we review the benefits every year. Is there a separate requirement for what leave is required by employees besides this? For example, if we allow accrual from year to year and they no longer want to do that, is there a requirement of a certain amount of sick leave? Anything you do as a company separate from paid leave for your own individual packages is really your choices, in this case, along with your board, in some cases, along with collective bargaining in a union environment, but really is separate and distinct from what we are required to do in paid leave. So that's where that negotiation may be interesting, just depends on your business needs and what you're offering. I will say this first year, because we don't provide benefits until September, it's kind of a mixed year because there will be a lot of folks who will need other kinds of benefits moving in besides paid leave, because 3/4 of the year will already happen before you can receive a benefit. So it's just something to be aware of that's unique about 2023. Just going back to the question above about the snail mail, email, it looks like Monica's answer is right on. We're still working through the options, and probably we're going to ask you inside the portal what your preference is maybe. And so that would be like a checkbox where you could say like, we prefer to get this in the snail mail or email or however. And so we're right now actually in the process of programming all of the technology for the benefits rollout that will happen next September. And so just it's also helpful sometimes to hear these questions so we can take those back to folks so that we're making decisions along the way and trying to provide this with as much option for both the business side and the individual side, making sure that it runs as smoothly as possible and has as many choices that will work for folks. Okay, so back to chat. Okay. Yeah, I think Deb, your point about like the push of the information, like, yeah, you wouldn't have to read our minds that something's waiting for you without us telling you that something is in the account. Yes, and I think the whole concept behind this modernized system is that it behaves more like the kinds of systems that we've become accustomed to in banking and other places where it works like that. Obviously, we have had mainframes forever and we are moving away from that. And so as we're, I think that's a great comment, and we'll make sure that folks see that, but I think that is definitely part of what we are planning to do. Question about how long the notice an employer will get before the employee goes on leave. There are a couple of stipulations. There are kind of two kinds of notice. And Monica, let me know if I say this incorrectly, but where possible, an employee should give you 30 days notice. So this would be like someone who's going to have a kid or adopt a kid or foster a kid, and you kind of know in advance, or you know you're going to have a surgery or something that's planned, right? And so you as an employer can actually request notice at a different interval, shorter actually, right? Is that right, Monica? Sorry.
Yes, for foreseeable leave.
For foreseeable,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So your predicted leave. So you could say, hey, at our company, we want 15 days if you're going to go out on, parental leave or something like that. But there is also the, hey, I didn't expect to be in a car accident and I'm now in the ICU, and so I didn't give you notice. And so that's something where you have, I believe it is 3 days in which to notify your employer that an unforeseen situation has occurred that has created a leave situation for you. Question, the overview I read online gave time requirements for the employee to notify the employer of the need for leave. Do I understand correctly that paid leave has the authority to approve or deny that leave, or just the financial benefits for the leave? And do you have an estimate of how quickly the approval and denial is determined? Yes. Okay, so I might have just touched on some of that, but we do have the authority as long as you're participating in the state trust, not an equivalent plan. So anyone who's participating in the state trust, we would be the ones who are working through all of the eligibility documentation and approval, and also notifying the individual like what their benefit amount is, and like the amount of time that they're out for leave. I believe that we are paying benefit within 2 weeks. So that means the approvals, the whole kind of process needs to occur within that 2 weeks. So like the approval and then letting them know, and then paid benefit. Another unique thing about this particular program, a little different from unemployment insurance at least, is that there is no waiting week. So people don't have to do any sort of a waiting week that you might have become accustomed to in the UI. This does not have that stipulation. Hopefully I answered those questions, but Margot, if you need a follow-up, let me know. Is an employee allowed multiple uses of this leave? Can they use it again and again? So you have sort of that, let me just say 12 weeks, and there's that caveat for medical related pregnancy where you get the 2 extra, but you have 12 weeks you can use in any year, benefit year. The way benefit year works for this program is the time in which you apply for and receive benefits. So let's just say I applied for and received benefits starting on September 15th, and I am going to have surgery and it's going to be 5 weeks. I would still have the remaining 7 weeks I could use for something else during the year, potentially before September 15th of the following year. However, if I was going to be out for 12 weeks because that's what I was approved for, then I would be out of my leave for the year in terms of paid leave, at least at the end of that 12 weeks, and I would have to wait for the year. But it is possible that someone could have multiple things that occur. My mom has cancer and I'm helping with the chemo for several weeks, and I have my own surgery, but you can't go above that 12 or the 14 for a pregnancy related medical. Will there be suggested language we can use to update our employee leave policies? Try to get ahead of this. Difficult when there's still so much in the air. Yes, we do have actually a lot of language. I think one thing that will really be helpful for businesses is that we are really close to releasing our model notice. So the model notice is just that sort of kind of all the sort of rules and technicalities of what paid leave has, when it starts, what the dates are, what the roles and responsibilities are. That may be helpful. I'll also just say that our rules are 95% done by the end of September. We'll have another few that will end in October, and then all of our rules, at least initially, will be put in place. And so that will also help with the sort of few places where we have flux going on. This is another reason to, though, sign up for our bulletins. We issue those. I think we are issuing bulletins monthly currently, but if we have anything in particular that occurs in between, we'll issue a special bulletin. But that is the best way in which you can find out, like, oh, like a guidebook was released. Oh, the model notice is out. Oh, these rules are now final, and here's the final answer on X, Y, and Z. So would really encourage people to go in and do that. Kathy's asking a question about out-of-state folks. So an Oregon employer with a remote worker living in Washington State or Florida. Oh my goodness, I am terrible at these place performance questions. And I know we have some examples that we're getting ready to publish. But I think that this really has to do with where the person is being paid, like where they're performing their work. So so there are kind of two things to this. One is, if you have 2 Oregon employees and you have one in Washington and one in Florida or wherever, the ones that are working somewhere else, even though they work for your business, they do count in your employer count. However, only the sort of Oregon-based, Oregon-paid employees would be the ones that are paying, and you are paying for their contributions into Paid Leave Oregon. So the 100% remote Florida person is going to be out of luck and not have any paid leave option, because that's not a state that has paid leave. The person in Washington State may very well be eligible for Washington paid leave. So that's just something to kind of keep an eye on. And then you'd only be paying in for your Oregon folks here. Hopefully that makes some sense. And I know there's a lot of nuances to, like, what if they're half-time here and half-time there? And we're working through these examples. Again, I don't want to overplug the website and the bulletins, but these are places where we will post those FAQs. And on this one, we call it place of performance. That's just our sort of bureaucratic jargon for where a person works and gets paid, and then what they're eligible for. We are working with our partners in Washington in particular to assure that we are giving out exactly the same guidance for people who may be in that border situation or perform work in both states. So that's one we're very close to issuing with our partners in Washington. If the year count from September to the following September or January. So the year count is really based on when you first take leave, or when you first have an eligible situation where you're qualified for leave. So if I'm qualified for leave in November, it'll go November to November. If it's February to February. So it really is about, it doesn't have a calendar year. It really is that starting with your leave for that year. If our employees receive 17 hours of paid sick leave each month, capped at $14.40, would this be considered an equivalent plan? Equivalent plan, you're going to have a variety of things to consider. So not just the hours. You also have to offer leave for all of the leave types that were described. So family, medical, and safe leave. You have to offer it up to 12 weeks plus the 2 weeks for pregnancy related. So when we say equal to or greater than, we really do mean it. It means all those stipulations. It also means you cannot require your employees to pay more into that equivalent plan than what is the 60% of the 1% gross wages that we are requiring as our state plan. So it really does have to have all those pieces. Now, what you've written here, I'm not sure if that math would quite equal or not, but just keep all those considerations need to be in place. And there is an equivalent plan checklist on our website. So that's something folks could go to and look at now. It's there. You can find it. And it's sort of like, these are the things in order to apply for equivalent plan that you would need. And then we are really close to issuing our equivalent plan guidebook that'll kind of come out at the same time that we go live with that modernized system where you can apply for equivalent plans. It'll be a much more robust, like it's 20+ pages of really technical details of what needs to be included and involved in those equivalent plans. Okay.
I went ahead and I just
yeah, go
wanted
ahead.
to I went ahead and added those checklists to the chat so you guys could access them. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Is the employee able to use their PTO in addition to their benefit? I think this is, if you're asking sort of in concurrence, then the answer to that is yes. So you could use your paid leave benefit in full. And then if there was employer benefit of PTO, sick leave, et cetera, you could potentially be able to use that as well. If that's not the question, please let me know. Did I hear correctly that the person out of state would not have the 40% withheld if they lived in another state, but worked for our company in Oregon, or the 60%? Yes, so if you're an Oregon-based employee, then you're going to be paying in. But if you're in Indiana and that's where you do your work and you're 100% in Indiana, then you, the company, or the person would not be paying. Hopefully that clears that up. It's when someone says, how about when they do 22 hours of remote work and 13 hours of this kind of work? Those we're still working on a little bit. So if you get into those specifics, again, we're really close to guidance there, but we want to make sure we're issuing the same guidance as other states with leave programs. Do we need to sign up for the bulletin, or will they be on the Oregon Employment Department website? Oh, this is a great question, Stacy. You do need to sign up for paid leave specifically. We do use a different listserv than if you're signed up for regular like unemployment or other employment department bulletins. So we'd encourage folks to, these will be paid leave specific. We're pretty much just doing these monthly bulletins, so it's not going to be a lot of a load to your email. It won't be a lot of information, or it could be something in the middle of those monthly ones, but I wouldn't expect a ton of traffic in your email for those, but you would need to do that separately, yes. Okay. Will the state approve the leave for more than one employee during the same period for a small employer? I mean, yes, this is definitely possible. So even if you're a small employer, it's possible that you have 3 employees who all qualify for leave and for whatever reasons, and they're eligible, they've met all the requirements. And so you could, even as a small employer, have multiple people out on leave. Certainly possibility, yes. We would not be looking at you as an employer and saying like, oh, they already have 3 people out on leave, so we're not going to approve anymore or something. It would just, if they're eligible, they meet the requirements, they met the wage requirements, et cetera, then they would be approved for leave regardless of their employer. Are there other questions? And I'm not seeing hands raised, so I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone either. One just came in, just to clarify, an employee of a small company can opt out. No employees can opt out. The only opting, I guess, nobody can really opt out. If you are a W-2 wage earner in the state of Oregon, you are in paid leave. There are not exceptions. It doesn't matter about size of employer, et cetera, you are in. The only opting in addition to that, is that if you are sort of a 1099 or a different kind of a wage earner, independent contractor, self-employed, et cetera, you can opt in and choose to pay, but there is no opting out for an employee. There is no opting out for an employer. There are those few folks who, as employers, they are out, federal government, tribal governments, the self-employed independent contractors, but you can't opt out if you don't meet one of those requirements. Is there a bulletin to give employees providing information regarding the program? So yes, we have a lot of information out there. We're also very happy to get folks print information, or if you have a particular group you want us to come speak to, that model notice I spoke to will be being sent out to all employers in the state, so you should receive that. We have a lot of information on our website. Again, I'm not just trying to drive people there, but there are print materials that are available in 11 languages that are sort of just overview of the program, what it is. There are overviews of different components, like what are contributions, what is the benefit. Those are all PDFs, so you could easily print them. They're sort of 1 and 2 pagers. We also similarly have video vignettes that you could push employees towards, or even like use in a staff meeting or whatever you'd like to do. Those are also very short, like 3-ish minutes each have a topic, so kind of a paid leave overview, what is contributions, etc. Those are also, I think in all 11 languages, 11 includes English. They all have also ASL overlay. So pushing people towards that information or sharing it with them is another good way to do that. And again, we do have some print information here, and we're happy, the outreach team that Monica is a member of, happy to come out and speak to an organization or do that virtually. Really just want to get the word out to folks. The when and how we need to inform employees. This will come out with the model notice, but clearly we want to get to folks as soon as we can this fall, because contributions will start to come out of people's paychecks on January 1st. And so we want to make sure that we're letting people know well in advance that this is something to expect and why and what this is for. I'm of the mindset that, you know, we can't go too early. Someone said, like, should we wait? Like, let's start now as much as we can. So starting now and using those tools that we have available on the website would be very helpful. And then of course the model notice will be sort of a formal way in which you can share that with your employees when you receive that, and that should happen in September. Sorry, I lost my place. Sorry if I missed this, but is it September to September or January for our year requirements for the plan? It really just depends, Stacy, on when someone claims a benefit. So their year would start whenever their benefit is you know, approved and they begin receiving benefits. So the year for each individual may be different. So it could be a February to February, it could be a September to September. Will really depend on the individual and when they apply and are approved for the benefit. Tammy asks, what's the date that it starts? January 2023. There will be some hardship as more money is coming out of people's checks during a pretty difficult economic climate. Yeah, I think, yeah, this is, yes, you're correct about the January 2023 date. That is when contributions will begin being deducted from employees' paychecks. And then you, as businesses, would be the ones holding that in trust. You'd be paying that quarterly alongside your unemployment insurance taxes or other things you do with our agency, again, through that new portal. The name of the new portal, just for folks to know, is Francis Online, and we can link you to that too. This is a place where all of your business with the agency will begin to happen in terms of collection of contributions and taxes and payment, et cetera. So that's a place that folks will become familiar with instead of the current OPRS system that you're used to. And I absolutely agree. It's more money coming out of the check, and also the benefit, especially for folks where that small amount of money coming out of a check, the benefit on that side, if you look at like that slide where we had the minimum wage worker, what they're paying into over a year is significantly less than even 1 week's worth of benefits. And so I think that sort of dual message of the fact that, yes, you are beginning to contribute, yes, but this will be a benefit you can access. And I mean, honestly, none of us know if we need to access this benefit at this moment in time. I mean, for certain people who might be planning to have a family or something, there may be a little more predictability, but I don't know if I'm going to have a diagnosis or a family member is going to have a diagnosis where I may need to take care of them. And so some things are unknown, and the idea would be that we are all able to take this benefit when it is needed for us and it's available when that happens. And that's sort of unpredictable situations. So I think the messaging about contributions has that other side of benefit. All right, other questions? And honestly, I'm not watching the clock either, so I'm not sure where we are on time.
I've got it. We're okay. We're at
Okay.
right at 1:30.
Okay, great.
I did drop in the link for Francis, so for the new modernized system, if somebody wants to take a look, there's a little bit of FAQs in there already, and so that can kind of help guide you through the transition process.
Okay, and then the question about the Francis Online. So we pay to the state directly to the above website, or it goes through the paycheck withholding. So you as a company will either by yourself, or if you have a payroll administrator, be withholding contributions for paid leave, just like you would any other withholdings that you keep. And then you would keep those in trust during the quarter. Then on the quarters, you would be making payment to the employment department for those paid leave contributions in that Francis Online system. Similarly, Francis Online will be a place where you're doing your unemployment insurance tax payments as well. And so it essentially will be a little bit more of a one-stop shopping where you would be going into that profile and have the ability to pay for both on the quarters and just manage that. The new system, I would really encourage people to go to that website. I personally found there's a little owl icon with a little microphone on his head. It looks like Monica's. And that owl is like the help and support button. And the help and support button has a lot of really useful sort of process and iconography, so you can see what the new system is going to have. So it may be a place you want to look at prior to September 6th, which is the first time you can go into the system officially when we launch it. But it should make things much, much easier than the previous system that everybody's been using for the last literally, I don't know, 50 years, whatever. So, but yeah, and if you have, there's actually also both paid leave and Francis Online have a sort of a contact us button. So if you go to their website, I mean, obviously they're all part of employment, but if you go to that Francis Online website, you could contact them and ask a specific question or ask any of these things that are specific to what it'll look like for you. Or you could go to paid leave. Similarly, we have a contact us button and you can push that, ask your question. We have staff who are monitoring that all the time. We have a goal of getting answers back to folks within 48 hours. I know we're pretty much exceeding that and getting them back same day, but you will get an answer pretty quickly through the contact us at either site. Other questions? We do not currently pay unemployment tax, so utilizing Francis, can funds be paid monthly or do they need to be paid quarterly? Oh yeah, there are probably actually a number of you who don't currently pay unemployment, and Francis will be new for you. The good news is it'll just be something new instead of something you're having to navigate that's different. But you will need to go and basically create a profile on the Francis Online. That's where you can find out how to do that on the help and support. And then it is a quarterly payment. I do not believe you have the option to pay monthly. Do you know that answer, Monica? I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, and I can ask.
I haven't seen anything to indicate that you can pay monthly.
I'm pretty sure it's just quarterly, but I'll double check on that. And also, is payment to the Oregon Department of Revenue or specifically to employment? It comes through that system, the payment. I'm going to mess this up because I know it is in partnership with the accounts at Department of Revenue, and I'm not sure of the exact complexities, but the payment does get paid quarterly in the Francis Online system. I think where the money goes is probably actually to accounts at Revenue, but that's probably more than you're asking. So let me, I'll also just ask this question of staff behind the scenes and see if we can't get you a
While you do that,
answer.
I will tackle this question.
Okay.
It says, are employees required to return to work after the leave, after their jobs are held for a week? So yes, the goal is for those employees to return to work after their approved leave has ended. assuming, you know, their medical condition is under control and everything else checks out, the goal is for them to return back to their employer.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I was told we can now pay the quarterly state tax in Francis, so just want to be sure we set up the vendor correctly. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You'll be paying those quarterly taxes and contributions for both, depending on if you have to do unemployment or not in Francis. And I think there are differences in if you want to do that as a business yourself and you're set up that way, or if you have like a payroll company that does your payroll for you, they may be the ones doing that. And there are different instructions in that Francis online of like how to set up those accounts if you have like a third party doing that for you. So I would not be able to give you the sort of specific details on how that really occurs, but there are instructions for both those kind of scenarios. And I'm still, people are kind of typing an answer to that previous question, so I'll let you know in a second. Okay. Payment comes to OED, it is quarterly. And sort of, this is another one of those where it's good feedback about if we're still talking about what that will look like, and there may be employers who want to set up monthly payments, so that may be a possibility. So we'll, we may want to just try and find that answer out a little more specifically from our partners on the Francis side of the house and get back to Sabrina with that, and she can let folks know. Other questions. How long are they required to work after the return? I'm not sure I understand that question. Do you, Monica? Sorry, I'm not.
I'm not quite clear on it. SL, would you like to come off of mute? Maybe see if we can figure out what it is you're trying to determine here. So I think maybe you're asking if there's like a required amount of time the employee has to stay and work with you upon returning from leave.
If they get payment, can they? Oh, yeah. Oh,
okay. So that's what they're asking. So at this time, there's no requirement that says, hey, after you come back from leave, you must work for 30 days for this employer, for 60 days or 90 days. They just are returning to work. And if, you know, something else happens that they have to maybe resign or, you know, you let them go or something like that for whatever it may be, then that's the way that it'll work out.
yeah. If they get payment, can they only work one day and then leave?
Brenda,
like
coming
yeah.
back after
You mean
leave,
like,
or?
oh, I get approved for my 12 weeks of you know, family leave, and I'm trying to figure out this. Sorry, Brenda. I think taking paid leave has to be taking leave from work. So the person has to be working in order to get leave. So you can't like say, I'm going to take 12 weeks and then quit the job on the third day you're getting your 12 weeks. Then you're no longer working. So you're no longer taking leave from work. So I think that might be where you were going with that. So you couldn't just quit somewhere inside your leave and still be eligible for leave. And we will obviously behind the scenes have the ability to see if someone is still, you know, employed because of the reporting structure. And then if they were receiving paid leave and they're not working, that'll be a flag for us to cease paying benefits and also recoup any benefits that were inappropriately received. So if that doesn't answer your question though, Brenda, let me know.
Yeah, there has to be that attachment still to the employer in order to be eligible.
And it looks like quarterly or annual payments for contribution is the answer, not monthly. But obviously you'll be keeping that in an account, and obviously, you could pay it on the quarter because it'll just be in that sort of separate account for you. Can an employee work from home while on leave and still receive paid leave? This is sort of a tricky question. I mean, kind of generally speaking, no, if you're working and you're being paid for work, you're not on leave from work, so you shouldn't be receiving a paid leave benefit. However, there are people who will get approved for maybe intermittent leave or something like that, where I just need to go do my chemotherapy or something once a week. And so maybe I'm working from home the other times or whatever, but you really can only get paid for leave if you're taking leave from work. And so maybe the person's working from home because of a condition, but really they're only getting paid leave for the times they're not working. Hopefully that answers. Yeah. Again, if any of these are missing the mark and we're not quite getting to the answer, please let us know. Yeah. Stacey, yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I mean, certainly it's possible that someone could take their leave and not return to work and quit at the end of the leave. It's always a possibility. That's certainly been possible all along with FMLA and OFLA as well. I'm sure that will happen in a portion of folks, but most folks can't afford to just ultimately quit a job at the end of a leave period, in particular if they have a new family member or just coming off of an illness or surgery or something like that. So again, kind of going back to the data we've seen from other countries, and then also from leave programs in this country that kind of precede us in those sibling states, this really does actually keep people more motivated to return to their employer at the end of a leave period in most cases. Can they take intermittent leave one day at a time? Is there a minimum? Great question. And yes, you can take intermittent leave. You'd have to be approved in advance. So like this all depends on what you're being approved for your condition and what the leave amount is, but it is possible to be approved for intermittent leave. The lowest increment though is 1 day. So you can't take intermittent leave an hour at a time or 6 hours at a time or something. So the lowest increment is 1 day. If somebody was set up for intermittent leave, you as the employer would be notified, hey, so-and-so is approved for intermittent leave up to 2 days per week for whatever the time period is, depending on what their medical condition is or what the situation is with a family member, et cetera. I think that this intermittent leave, it could happen in any of those 3 qualifying conditions. It just kind of depends on how people want to take the leave and what their medical providers issue as necessary. Is there a consultant or someone we can call if we have questions as we were trying to modify our policy and benefits? Yeah, Tammy, I would encourage you to just reach out to that, contact us on our website, and depending on the kinds of questions you have, we can have a staff member either call you back or get back to you with the specific questions you have. I do also think it's really less about us being able to talk to you about what you need to do. This is a conversation too you need to have with your own sort of lawyers, payroll folks, and insurers for your current benefits, so that inside your company. But we can certainly give you really clear information about like what is inside paid leave, so you can then make those individual determinations for your business. Yeah, this question for really, really small employers about what do you recommend if there are only 2 front staff and one takes leave for 12 weeks. I think this is the place where I was talking about working with businesses in the best partnership we can. We do have a business services division of our agency, and in particular, something like I'm thinking that means sort of reception front desk type person. We have the ability to go into our database to look at all of the people who are currently on unemployment, to be able to even sift through those folks and get a list of qualified individuals. And so we could help you as a business to manage that recruitment for you and be able to talk through who qualified individuals are through that sort, so that we could get you someone else for that particular duty, front desk, people who are qualified for that. And we help businesses all the time through our work source centers in terms of helping them with recruitment, even doing some of the initial interviews and hiring, et cetera. So for you really small businesses, that's an opportunity through our work source centers that we're hoping to really capitalize on for these situations, because that's definitely a real need.
I will add to that, Karen. Going back to the worksource centers, they are a really great resource. We also have Title 1B partners that can partner up with the worksource and with yourself, and maybe get somebody in there on a work experience. You know, if they're just trying to gain office skills or whatever the job might look like, it would be a really good opportunity for them to gain those skills while, you know, filling the need for you. And it could be, you know, just a 3-month job until your staff member comes back, but it would really serve like a dual purpose. It would fill your job and then get somebody ready for the workforce. So there are a lot of really great partnership opportunities there at WorkSource.
Thanks, Monica. And Monica used to work in a work source center, and I used to work with the other folks on the other side for the training. So thank you for that. I should have definitely mentioned that. I appreciate the backup. And then follow-up question, could you please share the link again for the temporary staff recruitment? So I think that would be just talking to your local worksource Oregon center, which maybe we can offline get you sort of the contact information. If you want a private message, Monica, like with your email, we can get you a contact in your wherever you're physically located. We have like 38 centers across the state, and so we'd want to get you connected to the right person. And if you have multiple sites, we can do that as well. As a nonprofit that serves children who are abused, we have a lot of background or probably, Yep, Tammy, I hear you. I do not have a perfect solution for this. I'm struggling as you are with not just places that have like people who have credentials, licenses, the background checks, where you can't just necessarily say like, oh, like reception's a little easier. But that being said, we do always have people on unemployment who are highly qualified, particularly to sort of this group, all kinds of people who are certified, credentialed in all kinds of medical occupations all the time, for whatever reasons the company is closed, et cetera. So I think that, and those people would be people who would obviously have previously passed background checks, et cetera. So I think we will do our very best to help connect you to qualified folks who might be able to fit, but also understand that that is not necessarily a perfect design, but that is how the law was passed. And so we're going to do our best to partner and help where we can, but understand that that is a difficult position. Yeah. Thanks for that comment, Deb. I mean, if people are not showing up for interviews or their first day, they're not going to receive unemployment benefits. So that's certainly something that you should share back with the agency, because that means they're not actually seeking and available for work. So there is a feedback loop so that people can't abuse the system with their benefits that way. That's a little outside of our purview here, but definitely on the unemployment insurance side. I think it is the investment in the background investigations, et cetera, and the time it takes to get them done. Yeah, I think, and Tammy, we should double check on this, but I would think that things like background investigations, et cetera, if you were choosing as a small business to contribute, that would be something that would be part of those assistance grants for small employers, if you happen to fit those, because that's part of those hiring costs. Now that doesn't save you time. So I know I'm saying that, and there's a lot there, but yeah. Okay. Yep. And yeah, the size of employer is in statute too, so something we don't have control or better trying to just navigate within. So yeah, I think there are a lot of folks who year to year are right on that cusp of like 23 to 30 employees, and from year to year might be called small or large depending. So other questions for chat or raising hands? I know we have a few minutes left. I also don't want to keep folks longer than necessary.
I just want to thank you both for all of your time and expertise today. That, you know, this is of course a big program. There's a lot of questions, but I appreciate you taking the time to meet with this group and answer all of them. And we will share the recording and materials as well.
Yeah. And we're happy to come back. We're happy to answer questions on the side. Again, if you have an organization separately you belong to, or you need a refresh or whatever, please reach out to us through the contact us on our website, and we'll make sure that we do that follow-up. I'm sure lots of folks will have things that kind of get in their mind afterward as you're sort of processing all the information. And I'm just, if a small employer chooses to not contribute at 40, can they choose to contribute in food share? Yes, Deb, they can. And actually, I should be really clearer here. You can choose to contribute starting the day somebody wants to take leave, actually, but then you have a commitment to take on that contribution for your employees 2 years, Monica, for 2 years once you begin that.
Yep,
So
2
you can
years.
start in the future, so you don't have to start out initially like on January 1st, but then let's say somebody starts taking leave next October, you could start contributing, but you'd have to start contributing for all your employees, and then for 2 years as the commitment. But you, there is no sort of time, you can opt into that or start paying anytime. I guess I shouldn't use the word opt in, but start paying anytime. Will we continue paying for short-term disability assistance next year, and we won't contribute at first? Yeah, this again, Deb, is a question you need to talk to your, third-party insurer for your short-term disability. My guess is that most businesses will want to continue those level of benefit and options because, of course, people will probably want the option to purchase those short-term disability plans or to have that benefit. Now, once we get into a full year of paid leave, so for calendar year 2024, that may be something where folks want to reevaluate what their options are. And so that's where you really do need to talk to your short-term disability and, whoever makes these decisions in your company, whether it be sort of a bargained agreement or a board or whatever.
So Karen, I had one come in on direct message. It says during leave, the employee has no pay. How do they contribute their 60%?
Monica, do not know the question. I don't think they have to contribute during the leave. It's only on wages. So, but if that doesn't sound right to you, I will double check here.
Yeah, let's double check on that. I mean, as far as I know, I don't believe that we'd collect any contributions, but we'll double check on that for you and hopefully have it before our session ends. And if we don't, we will make sure and get it to Sabrina, who can get it over to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and we can, even if no other questions come in, I'll probably get an answer pretty quickly, and that person could stay on and we can get the answer.
Yeah, I do just want to invite everybody. I'm going to drop into chat the links. I've been dropping them in as the conversation has been flowing, but I will do it again for our email, our website, how to sign up for our bulletin. I've also included on there our social media pages. If you guys would like to follow us, we definitely invite you to do so. We're going to be posting lots of information kind of as things come in. It'll be posted through the bulletins on our social media. And so we definitely would encourage everyone to like and follow the pages, as it'll help you just get information into your hands as soon as we get it, pretty much.
The question that just posted was, will taxes be taken out of the employee's weekly paid leave? That is one of the questions we're not sure about. This is a really interesting thing with the IRS and the State Department of Revenue, Oregon Department of Revenue, where are these considered sort of a medical benefit or a wage benefit? And so there's a little bit of a different answer that could come through on the taxability. This is one we are really working hard to get people to commit to an answer that we can share with folks. We know that that's a major question a lot of people have, and we just don't have the answer yet. Okay, and to back up to the question about when an employee is on leave, do they continue to pay their 60% contribution? What I said was correct. you do contribute based on your wages, and you don't have the income while on leave, so you don't contribute while you're on the leave, but as soon as you came back, you begin to contribute again based on your wages. Oh, do you need, I think maybe you're asking, do you still continue to pay the health insurance premiums, SL? Yes, the company is required to continue paying for those health insurance benefits while the person is out on leave. And if that's not what you're asking, let me know.
I did also drop into chat the link for our YouTube channel, which has on there the short videos that Karen was talking about earlier. And you can go through there. They are very well labeled. So you'll see small employer contributions, equivalent plans, your overview. So kind of whatever subject you're interested in learning more about, you should have a really good resource there available to you.
Your follow-up question, SL, I'm asking on my lifeline over here. So hopefully I can get you an answer before we close. I like this lifeline thing. I want it like all the time in my entire life. This would be good. We often know that we don't have all those really technical answers, and so it's nice to have a few people on the side who can help us out. Looks like we'll get an answer here real quickly before we close out.
If only it was the same on Can I Be a Millionaire, right? Where we win.
For $10,000, yeah. I love it. Our Teams chat has a similar thing like you might see on an iPhone or an Android where it has the little dots going. So I can tell people are typing, but haven't gotten an answer yet. Any other questions before we let folks go, or any questions about where to find information? We pay 80% of their healthcare premium and they pay 20%. How does their 20% get paid? Yeah, Bill. I think that's the same question SL was asking. That's the one I've asked over here in my chat with staff. So I'm trying to get an answer for that, like how that would be paid. If we do not get an answer for that today, we can get back through Sabrina to let folks know the answer to that. I'm just not sure. Apologize for that. A lot of things rolling around in my head at all times, and sometimes these specific details are escape you in the moment. So yeah. And also, my guess is some of these really specific ones, again, people are going to think of tomorrow or the next day, or as you're thinking about this. So use that contact us format on the website, or if we need to come back for specifics or talk to a group, we're happy to do that. So if folks can just utilize that, we know a lot more will kind of emerge as people begin to think about how this rolls out individually for you as a business. And I'm not seeing anything come through, so I'm guessing they're looking at some statutes and some other rules while they're thinking. So I may not be able to get this to us, but we can definitely get it to Sabrina offline. Right now, we pay for them first. My employee pays the office back, and then after they return to work. Okay, yeah, I'm guessing that is a strategy that might be how this deploys, because obviously you can't take money out of no wages. Oh, wow. It's a really long one. Okay, so I'm just going to say this, and then probably we can cut and paste the rule that belongs to it so folks can dig into it a little more specifically for yourself. But there is a rule in our benefits batch 5 rules. And so actually that means this has not become finalized and we're still doing public hearings. So keep that in mind, because if you have an opinion about this, you may want to join one of our public hearings and actually contribute to this conversation if you have thoughts about it. we can paste in, I think, Monica, if you want to paste in that middle section, that is just the cut and paste of the rule, that would be great for
Yes.
folks. And then I'll summarize it here to say, if an employee cannot or will not pay their share of the premium cost, the employer may elect to discontinue healthcare benefit coverage unless doing so would render the employer unable to restore the employee to full benefit coverage once the employee returns to work. So that's the non-technical, non-rule summary. And then we're going to paste in the longer rule language. If you have opinions about this particular rule, please go in to our website and join us at our final public hearings for these batch 5 rules. These will become final in October. And so this may be a place where you still have some time to influence the last few rules that we're writing. So, and for those of you, sorry, it's pretty long for those of you who don't have interest in this question, but it gets you to the specifics, and you can, again, go to the website and find that rule in full. And thanks for hanging in there with us while we got that last answer. And hopefully that helps for those of you. Again, we're really here for you. We want to get the word out. We want to make this as user-friendly, both for all of you as businesses and for individuals who need to use the program once coverage is available. So thanks for allowing us the time today to share with you, and for the really great questions and the interactive way in which this worked. I'm just appreciative of it. So thank you. And I don't know, Sabrina, if I should toss it back to you with final seconds or.
Nope, I think we're all good. Just thank you both so much. We'll get this recording and follow-up materials sent out. So
great.
Thank you.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thanks.